ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतां स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदयन्तस्थो हि भद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृच्छतम् अष्टप्रायशभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवतेरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 29, titled Talks Between Narada and King Prachini Barhi, texts 49 and 50. Text 49. Astiryadarbai prag agrai kartsneyena kshitimandalam stabdo brihadvadhanmani कर्म नावैष्यत् परम् तत्कर्म हरितोषं यत् स विद्या तन्मतिर्यया आस्तीर्यदर्वै प्रागग्रे कार्त्स्नेयेन क्षितिमण्डलं स्तब्धो बृहद्वदान्मानि कर्म नावैष्यत् परम् तत्कर्म हरितोषं यत् स विद्या तन्मतिर्यया आश्चर्यदर्भै प्रागाग्रे कात्स्येन क्षितिमण्डलं स्तब्धो बृहद्वदान्मानि कर्म नावैषि यत्परं तत्कर्म हरितोषं यत् स विद्या तन्मतिर्यया. Synonyms: Asteria, having covered; thereby, by kusha grass; Prakagrai, with the points facing east; Katsniyena, altogether; Shitimandalam, the surface of the world; Stabdha, proud upstart; Bruhat, great; Badhat, by killing; Mani, thinking yourself very important; Karma, activity; Na avaishi, you do not know; Yat, which; Param, supreme; Tat, that; Karma, activity; Haritosham, satisfying the Supreme Lord; Yat, which; Sa, that; Vidya, education; Tat, unto the Lord; Mati, consciousness; Yaya, by which. Translation and purport by Jivan Guru, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. My dear king, the entire world is covered with the sharp points of kusa grass, and on the strength of this you have become proud because you have killed various types of animals in sacrifices. Because of your foolishness, you do not know that devotional service is the only way one can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You cannot understand this fact. Your only activities should be those that can please the Personality of Godhead. Our education should be such that we can become elevated to Krishna consciousness. Purport. In this verse, the great sage Narada Muni directly insults the king because he was engaged in performing sacrifices that entail the killing of a great number of animals. The king was thinking that he was great for having performed so many sacrifices. But the great sage Narada directly chastises him, informing him that his animal killing only leads to his being puffed up with false prestige. Actually, anything that is done which does not lead to Krishna consciousness is a sinful activity. And any education that does not lead one to understand Krishna is false education. If Krishna consciousness is missing, one is simply engaged in false activities and false educational pursuits. Text 50. हरिर्देहे भृताम् आत्मा स्वयं प्रकृतिरीश्वरः तत्पादमूलं शरणं यथा क्षेमो नृणामिह हरिर्देहभृताम् आत्मा स्वयं प्रकृतिरीश्वर तत्पादमूलं शरणं यथा क्षेमो नृणामिह हरिर्देहभृताम् आत्मा स्वयं प्रकृतिरीश्वर तत्पादमूलं शरणं यथा क्षेमो नृणामिह. Synonyms: Hari, Sri Hari, Deha Bhritam, of living entities who have accepted material bodies. Atma, the super soul. Swayam, himself. Prakriti, material nature. Ishvara, the controller. Tat, his. Padamulam, feet. Sharanam, shelter. Yata, from which. Kshemaha, good fortune. Dranam, of men. Iha, in this world. Translation purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Sri Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the super soul and guide of all living entities who have accepted material bodies within this world. He is the supreme controller of all material activities in material nature. He is also our best friend, and everyone should take shelter at his lotus feet. In doing so, one's life will be auspicious. In Bhagavad purport, in Bhagavad Gita 18.61, it is said, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshu arjuna tishtati. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna. The living entity is within the body, and the super soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is also there. He is called Antaryami and Chaitya Guru. As Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, he is controlling everything. Sarvasya chaham hrudi sannivishto matasmritirjnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Everything is being directed by the super soul within the body. Therefore, the better part of Valor is to take his direction and be happy. To take his directions, one needs to be a devotee. And this is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10:10. Tesham satata yukthanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadhami buddhi yogam dam yena mamupayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Although the super soul is in everyone's heart, Ishvara Sarva Bhodanam Hriddeshe Arjuna Tishtati. He talks only to the pure devotees who constantly engage in his service. In Chaitanya Bhagavata, Antya 345, it is said, Ahare se bali vidya mantra adhyayana Krishna pada padme ye karaye stiramana. One who has fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna is to be understood as having the best education and as having studied all the Vedas. There are also other appropriate quotes in Chaitanya Bhagavata. Sei se vidyara phala janiha nishchaya Krishna pada padme yadi chitta vritti raya. The perfect result of education is the fixing of one's mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. Adi 13.178. Dik Vijaya Kariba Vidyara Karya Nahe Ishware Bajile Sei Vidya Satya Kahe. Conquering the world by means of material education is not desirable. If one engages himself in devotional service, his education is perfected. Adi 13.173. Pade Kene Loka Krishna Bhakti Jani Bare Se Yadi Nahila Tabe Vidyaya Kikare. The purpose of education is to understand Krishna and his devotional service. If one does not do so, then education is false. Adi 1249. Tahare se bali dharma karma sadachara Ishware se priti janme sammata sabhara. Being cultured, educated, very active, and religious means developing natural love for Krishna. Antya 344. Everyone has dormant love for Krishna by for Krishna, and by culture and education that has to be awakened. That is the purpose of this Krishna consciousness movement. Once Lord Chaitanya asked Sri Ramananda Rai what the best part of education was, and Ramananda replied that the best part of education is advancement in Krishna consciousness. End of purport. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Dreshtaya Bhutale Shrimade Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadi Shatarini Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I humbly seek the blessings of all assembled Vaishnavas, and thank you for the opportunity to purify myself by reading and summarizing from Srimad Bhagavatam today. Please forgive if I add my own interpretation to the summary. I'll be summarizing based on Srila Prabhupada's purport to this section. So we are in this, again, chapter title, Talks Between Narada and King Ruchini Barhi. And we have been spending quite some time in this discussion about King Puranjana, who then became the daughter of King Vidarbha, and then how, because of some pious activity that King Puranjana had performed, he um, got married in the next birth when he was born as a girl to a king who was a pious king, and because of surrendering to the king and serving him very sincerely, she then got the opportunity to meet a Brahmana who was none other than, again, the super soul in this allegorical story, and then received instructions. And then all this made originally King Prachani Barhi realize that this is very similar to his life. And then finally, Narada Muni really reveals that that was an allegorical story indeed for King Prachani Barhi to realize what he has been doing. And now, after all this allegorical story narration, then Narada Muni is directly instructing King Prachani Barhi. And in fact, we can see in this chapter, especially in this section, that he's very direct in even calling Prachani Barhi that he's ignorant, he is like foolish, etc. So we can see this is kind of a very interesting preaching technique where initially Narada Muni did not directly accuse King Prachani Barhi, but rather he developed this relationship, and then after he got the confidence of in other words, after King Prachini Barhi realized that Narada Muni is totally helping him for his own welfare, then when that relationship was established, then Narada Muni is directly instructing King Prachini Barhi, even using strong words. We also see this in many of Srila Prabhupada's letters and conversations, that Srila Prabhupada was very, very strong a little later in the movement. Initially, he was very, very flexible. I was just hearing this recently that when Yamuna Mataji was starting to cook for Srila Prabhupada, and of course, she was not perfect. I mean, she was still smoking at that time. And in middle of cooking, she would come to Prabhupada and ask, "Oh, Prabhupada, can I go have a smoke and come back and continue cooking?" And then Prabhupada was not, I mean, because they were still beginning at that time, they were initial stages. So Prabhupada immediately said, no, you cannot go right now, but once you're done cooking, maybe then you can go, because you are in middle of something to Krishna, and Krishna doesn't like getting distracted from his service. So why don't you just finish and then go for a smoke? And then that's how Prabhupada was accommodative initially. But then because of that devotional service that Prabhupada engaged disciples in, slowly they got purified, and then they realized how foolish they were in kind of asking Prabhupada such questions and such conversations that they had with Srila Prabhupada. And that was initially, but then Prabhupada later, when he was performing a yajna and the devotees were supposed to have arranged everything, but they had missed some important item, like a bowl of fruits or something, and then Prabhupada was very, very, very angry directly, and then was chastising them that I can never, just like a dog's tail cannot be bent or cannot be made straight, it cannot make you all perfect or complete. So that was kind of, in a fit of anger, said that. But at that point, the devotees, the disciples, were in like good relationship, and they had completely surrendered, and they really took that as an instruction, and then they were like very sincere afterwards, following Prabhupada's instruction. So this is similar thing that we see here in Narada Muni, where he's directly accusing Kiran Prachini Barhi of what he was doing. So in yesterday's verse, we saw how in the section last few days we have been seeing how less intelligent people accept the Vedas, and then they think that is all is important, um, but then they are not interested in their real home, which is like the Supreme Person of Godhead's home, but they are rather illusioned and search for other homes. I mean, we also see in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna to say the same thing, that one should not be um, distracted by the flowery words of the Vedas. And even as we know, Srimad Bhagavatam started by Vyasadeva writing different or separating the Vedas into four, and then writing different itihasas and even different Puranas before Srimad Bhagavatam. And from all that, he was not satisfied and he was still missing something. And at that same time, Narada Muni came and then explained to him that although he gave all the ritualistic methods from in the Vedas, and then he wrote different Puranas, but still, it's because he was not addressing the root, which is nothing but the glories of the Supreme Person of Godhead. He was not describing those. He was not completely satisfied. So this is similar here, where Narada Muni is also saying that, I mean, one can think that accepting Vedas is one's goal, but then even after you do that, you will not be satisfied. So why take that route? So the only way to get a complete bliss in this life and in the next life is to take up to this Krishna consciousness. And we see in today's verse how um, um, Narada Muni is pointing out that you're on the strength of this, you have become proud because you have killed various types of animals and sacrifices. Because of your foolishness, you do not know that devotion service is the only way to can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is very interesting. The purport says that the king was thinking that he was great for having performed so many sacrifices. But the great sage Narada Muni directly chastises him. And this is interesting because if you see even a thief, he may start stealing like a small thing, and because he was successful in stealing a small thing, then he performs a bigger stealing activity. And if he's successful with that, then he goes higher and higher. So he thinks that he's getting good at it, and then um, he's very confident in doing the crime. So similarly, even for us, the lesson is that we might do something. We might do something outside devotion service, thinking nobody notices it, or we can come back to devotion service, or it's just one-time thing that we'll do and then not do it again. But I mean, Maya is so powerful that we will think that we are like getting better in um, performing that activity and still not getting distracted, but actually we will be distracted. We'll be thinking to do more and more of that. So we have to be very careful in not deviating from this path of devotion service, because as even in Bhagavad Gita, there's an analogy that in a big boat, even if there is like one single hole, that is good enough to sink the whole ship or the whole boat. So we have to immediately plug in any hole and cannot afford to be distracted in this very, very valuable human life. And in text 50, there are so many different references that Prabhupada gives from Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhagavad Gita. Ultimately, the message in this section is that um, if one needs to be considered as an educated person, then he needs to know the knowledge of Krishna. I mean, only by Krishna consciousness one can be educated, one can have good culture, and one can have good character. Because one may be very, very educated, but if his character and culture is not conducive for devotion service, or is not inspiring others to take up to devotion service, then there is no point in such education. So again, for us, finally, the instruction is that we have to strongly focus on our devotion service by hearing and chanting. And when we do it together, this process of hearing and chanting, then we will not be distracted, and we will receive instructions through the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. When we hear and when we chant, then we will get the conviction that Krishna is our real father, and then we should not be distracted from it. And Krishna will help us if we have the sincere desire while chanting that we should not be distracted. Then Krishna will help in focusing on his name and hearing his name and glories, and will reveal to us through either devotee association or through instructions from the books, or through meeting great sadhus. So we should be just trying to focus on our practice sincerely, and then we will get the help that we need from Krishna and from the disciplic succession. With that, I'd like to conclude my summary.